Well, this is going to be a lot of fun. This is the Jon Krawczynski Show, starring Jon Krawczynski from The Athletic. I'm Jim Souhan from the Star Tribune and TalkNorth.com. Today we're going to have our friend, peer, colleague, Chris Hine, beat writer, covering the Timberwolves for the Minnesota Star Tribune, we're going to talk about all the obvious NBA and Timberwolves topics, but we want to start with Chris's book. He wrote a book about Anthony Edwards. Seems to be going very well. Let me just move some of the furniture, then we'll get into that conversation. We're coming to you from the Aquarius Home Services studio. We're presented to you by Giggly THC Beverages and Lexus of Wayzata and Maplewood. Hey, thanks to Aquarius Home Services, they've been a big part of the network.
That first sip of coffee on a summer morning. Sunshine. Caffeine. What's better? How about water so good it makes your coffee jealous? Water from Aquarius, your authorized independent Connecticut dealer. Enjoy sparkling dishes, cloud-soft laundry, and worry-free water from every faucet. Likely for less than your daily iced coffee. Enjoy up to 25% off a new Connecticut system and schedule your free water analysis at AquariusHomeservices.com. Aquarius, earning the right to be recommended.
Join us after the Twins day game on Thursday, June 12th at Parlay Kitchen and Bar for the Talk North Sports Report live show presented by Giggly THC Drinks. Catch myself, Mark Rosen, Lavelle E. Neal III, Jon Krawczynski, and our special guest, five-time WNBA champion Rebecca Brunson. Reserve your VIP spot now at fanhq.com. Don't miss out. Let's dive in. Chris, as a writer, my first question about the book is not really so much about Anthony Edwards is, man, when you're as busy as you are, how do you write a book?
It helps to not have any family, any significant other, any kids, anybody to answer to at the end of the day except yourself. That number one, that's totally true. And it's a blessing and a curse because it's a blessing because I had the time and the space in August and September and October largely of last year to do it. But you also don't have like a physical support system there with you every day. And there's definitely some harder moments when you are doing this and undertaking this project, especially as you're trying to figure it out in the early weeks. So I had the time and the opportunity to just drive down to Atlanta and spend 6 weeks there and get all my thoughts organized. But sometimes there were some tough nights just in your own head trying to think like, am I going to be able to pull this off, or am I good enough to pull this off? And those were some tough moments. I'm not going to lie.
Hey, Chris, when you, with all of the tough moments that went and all of the work that you put into it, just what was the feeling when you opened that box the first time and you had the book right in your hand and you looked at it and here's the tangible product of all of this hard work? That
was really cool. I was aware I was being recorded at that moment too. So I was trying to put on a good face, but it was very cool. And what I said in the video, I think I pinned it to my Twitter page, but it was true. I felt a lot of gratitude in that moment for a lot of people that helped get it there, because it took dozens of people to, help me put it together, to agree to interviews for it, and some people that are in the book, like Dana Watkins, for instance. I thank him so much because he was basically my guide to Ant's life in Atlanta for the month of August. And without him, I don't know that the book turns out how it does, or it turns out differently, or doesn't turn out at all. Maybe, who knows? So I was just very grateful for everybody. And, whether it was people at the Wolves, people at Georgia, people in Atlanta, just a lot of gratitude, because nobody had to say yes to anything. People could have ignored my phone calls, text messages, but everybody basically said yes. And I was very grateful for that, because without about 40 to 50 people saying yes, the book doesn't happen.
I was kind of interested in your process of putting this together because, we both are, doing the same work. I'm sure we both have thought about books and things and as a step in our careers. But for this particular project, you have been in on the front end of Ant's career since he got to Minnesota. I have always wondered how I would arrange something that I have such intimate knowledge about. And how did you sort of go about telling this story, even though there's big sections of this story that you have told, you've been to Atlanta before. You and I have both gone down there. Like we've kind of documented through the years step by step, but then the process of sort of like writing the definitive text that is putting all of that together. How do you go about like just in your mind organizing and arranging and saying, this is how I want the book to look?
Well, one of the things that I think, you know, whether it was with your stories or mine, I just assumed going in that people, even though people did read them, that they either didn't read them, would never read them, or remembered them. Like you and I probably remember the stories better than readers will, just because that's how it works. So even if I was repeating stuff that had been told before, I wasn't really going to sweat it too much, and just all right, well, this is all part of the same story. And really, the story I did like 3 years ago, I just used the people, like, you know, whether it was Dana Watkins, the Hinton family, or his registrar at Holy Spirit, Rachel Little. I just said, all right, we're doing a book now. And they were so game for like telling additional stories and going into additional detail that it really fleshed everything out. And I tell people too, like, it was tough I didn't know how the book was going to be organized early on, but then as I kind of got into the process of it, it was like, okay, well, he spent 2 years at Holy Spirit, so that could be its own section. He spent 1 year at Georgia, so that could be its own section. And then the first 3 chapters were like his early life. And so that kind of covers the same ground, but I broke it up by sport. I was like, all right, well, here's what his football career was like and what life was like in and around Oakland City. And then here's what basketball season was like for him and what life was like during those months of the year. So that's kind of how I just ended up approaching it after I collected all these interviews. So that really was it. It just kind of took shape as the interviews took place. And I was like, oh, okay, for 6 months of the year, he played football, and then 6 months of the year, he played basketball. So let's talk about what his life was like in each of those sections. And then once he gets to high school, it's basically just a sequential rise: high school, college, Timberwolves, Olympics. And that's how it kind of closes.
What, if there's one or two things that you learned or discovered about Ant, or about things that you didn't know, something that, you know, that you came up and just like, wow, this is something that is new to the, I mean, there's going to be so much familiarity that you tell in this book, but what really jumps out at you is like, yeah, this is something that wouldn't have come about had I not just really dove in for months and months and went the extra mile with it.
Yeah, I think I was struck by just how much people in his life always knew that he had like this emotional intelligence, this ability to like read a room, and just have an innate sense, especially after his mother and grandmother pass away. There's just this innate sense of who to let into his life and who to not. And I think his ability to read people, to read their energy, I think that carries over into his NBA career and how he deals with his teammates, how he deals with his coaches. And I think that is like a subtle piece of the depth of Anthony Edwards that not everybody sees when they open up Instagram or social media and see the highlights or the interview clips, is that he's always had this innate ability to just read people, read a situation, be positive with people at the end of the day as well. But a lot of it is, it's who he is, yes, but some of it I think too is like intentional and like being a bit of a politician in a way to work a room or to read a room. And I think having that at like 14, 15, 16 was kind of eye-opening for me, at least, that he had this quote unquote old soul that people like to say at that young age, to have those characteristics about him.
John, one quick thing. I just want to remind people we're going to do our second live Talk North Sports Report, 4:00 on Thursday at Parlay Kitchen and Bar, downtown Minneapolis. It's basically the new sports bar under the Union rooftop right there downtown. We're timing it to catch people coming out of the Twins game. Come on by. Again, show's 4 to 5, but if you get there early, we'll be hanging out. If you get there a little bit in the middle of the show, you're welcome to come in. Guests are Jon Krawczynski, Lavelle Neal III, Rebecca Brunson, the great Rebecca Brunson, and they're stuck with me. Mark Rosen is our MC. Stop by. Steve Jadasek is going to sign autographs afterward in conjunction with Fan HQ. And hey, you get to meet Rebecca Brunson, who's one of the all-time greats. We'd love to have you stop by. We're going to have a lot of giveaways, tickets, memorabilia, bobbleheads. There are going to be really good giveaways. And you also get to meet Jon Krawczynski if you haven't already. Although John's such a Minnesota guy, I feel like he's met every Minnesotan. If you're the Minnesotan who hasn't met Jon, show up. Also want to let you know, we are presented to you by Giggly THC Beverages. I've talked a lot about how good it is, but I also want to tell you about the lack of bad. You're not going to have a hangover. You're not going to wake up feeling groggy. You're not going to regret having had something that tasted good or that had a little kick the night before. You can get 5 milligram THC, 10 milligram THC. You can get teas. You can get, by the way, my dog's about to start screaming, so I'm going to mute myself here in a second. But it tastes great and you're going to love it. The flavors are great. The cocktails, the teas, the seltzers. And let's hear it from Jon on Lexus of Wayzata and Maplewood.
If you're in the market for a new luxury vehicle, look no further than our good friend Charlie Swanson at Lexus. Whether you're on the west or the east side of the Twin Cities, they've got you covered with two great locations, Lexus of Wayzata and Lexus of Maplewood. Check out the all-new Lexus TX, a spacious SUV with 3 rows of seating and plenty of room for all your gear. Head over to lexusofwayzata.com or lexusofmaplewood.com for details and to find your next ride today.
Okay, let's get back to the book. Yeah. So Chris, Ant is beloved by his teammates, very well thought of throughout the organization. He's not the most accessible athlete we have in the market. He doesn't always do the interviews that most star athletes do. What was he like dealing with you in terms of this book? Did you need to rely on him a lot? Was he good about that kind of stuff? Did he get what you were doing?
I came into this expecting him to not participate, and that basically ended up happening. But I will say the one thing that I'm grateful for was a lot of times you hear stories about, like, if somebody's doing a book on somebody and that person doesn't want the book done, they kind of tell everybody else in their orbit, like, don't talk to the person writing the book. Ant did not do that here. And when I first told him about it in July in Las Vegas, he essentially encouraged me to go ahead and do it. And so I was very grateful that happened, at least that way. I approached him in like October, back in the preseason, about talking for it. And he initially agreed to talk for it. And then like 2 weeks later or so, he changed his mind. He was kind of overdoing like all these commercials and extra things that he was doing. And he just didn't want to really sit down for it anymore. That's just kind of how he is. So I ended up not talking to him specifically for the book, but if you read, it's like I try to sprinkle in stuff that he said over the years, stuff I got from him on the road, even this season, that I was kind of adding in as the book was taking shape and being edited. So I think the latest quotes I have in there are from January of 2025. I was able to sneak some of those in at the last minute. And so, but yeah, the one thing that he was very encouraging and allowed the process to happen, didn't stand in the way of it. So that's how, I was able to talk to some of the closest people to him for the book. And for that, I'm thankful that he allowed that access into his world.
Yeah. And Chris, that makes sense, because there was like about several scrums that I was involved in during the season, early in the season, where we asked about the game, and then here's Chris. Hey, in second grade, Ant, you went to.
I didn't go that deep, but there was stuff like when he would talk about like his shot and like how that was always motivating him to like be a good shooter. Like I got some of that stuff in. How he talked about some of the film sessions he had with Finch during the season. So there's a section in the book about that. So I was like, ooh, let me grab these quotes and throw those in. So just various points where he would say stuff throughout the season. After a game in Washington, he had a really long answer about his relationship with Justin Holland. So I was like, that's got to go in the book. So just those little moments of sprinkling in his voice. And, I think the only people that really noticed that he didn't maybe talk specifically for the book are just us, because I have to say, like Edward said in 2025 or December 2024, whatever. If you read the book, like you wouldn't even think that he didn't specifically sit down to be interviewed for it in those sections.
I said a couple of the largest pieces I did for the Star Tribune, those 100-inch takeout features were on Randy Moss and Joe Mauer. Randy Moss did not want to talk. He didn't talk until he realized I talked to everybody else. And he was like, all right, I guess I might as well talk to you. You've already talked to everybody. And Joe Mauer didn't want to talk during his MVP season until he realized I talked to everybody else. Well,
Joe can't talk.
Joe can talk. He can't say anything.
Yeah, right.
He can speak. He just, and in both those cases, I look back and I thought they almost did me a favor by not being the first ones interviewed because they forced me to talk to 50 other people.
Yeah. It was kind of similar here where I didn't want to talk to, if I was going to talk to him, I didn't want to do it at the beginning of the process. Yeah. And it definitely, and it wouldn't have even shaken out that way because when I was largely reporting the book, he was in Paris at the Olympics last summer. So he wasn't even available to sit down during the first month and a half of me actually doing the book. But actually that was kind of the reverse problem for me. When Ant saw that I had talked to everybody, he said essentially, well, he doesn't need to talk to me then. He talked to everybody else. So I had the opposite problem that you did, Jim. He's like, oh, well, he talked to everybody, so I don't need to talk. So I do wonder, if he reads it, and especially with some of the football and early AAU days, if he has a different version of events that maybe he would have liked to have gotten on the record in some places versus letting other people tell some of those stories.
Well, it's early enough in his career. There can be an Ant 2. There could be a sequel to the book. So go for it, Chris. Yeah.
I'm not ready to think about
Chris,
that yet.
Okay. What was, I was there at Game 5, Oklahoma City. They get wiped out, but Ant was kind of gathering with Trey and Justin Holland and all of his guys, Nick, at the end of it, and you went and handed a couple books to them. Was that kind of a cool little moment to share there? And then they have shared it on social media and stuff. I hope that's kind of helped a little bit with some promotion and things for your book.
Yeah. I didn't know just kind of what kind of mood they might be in or anything like that, but I hadn't given a copy to Ant, but I'd gotten them kind of at the beginning of that series or right around that time. And so I was, and we don't have too much access to Ant, especially in the playoffs like that. Everything is so controlled and structured. So I was just going to see if the right moment appeared to hand them a copy of it. And they were just kind of hanging out after Game 5. So I was like, they seem in a decent enough mood. So let me go ahead and just do this. So I handed them the book and, I basically said, this is so your dream was to get to the NBA. I said, my dream as a writer was to do something like this. And, here you go. And Nick came over, he wanted a copy of it and he immediately flipped to the pictures and wanted to see what the photos were. And, a couple of him and Ant together from when they were in high school and things like that. So it was a cool moment to see them take the book, kind of start flipping through it, see what was in it. And then, they took the picture with it. So that was a really cool moment too, to see them hold that up. And, a lot of those guys that are in that picture are interviewed in the book and played a big part in it.
I know that's one thing kind of specifically in the book that you discuss and you and I have both written about is this circle that he has around him, I think feels unique. Nick Maddox, Trey McCain, Justin Holland, Rachel Little, a lot of the people that he has surrounded himself with, it is a very tight circle, but there's sort of where you were saying earlier that Ant has an emotional kind of an EQ, a high, EQ that way. I think that most of the people in that group have it. And just what do you see about, I guess, the dynamic of Ant's people and how that has kind of helped him get to this point to deal with some things off the court that have not been, always the most flattering and just, kind of who he has surrounded himself with, I guess.
Well, it feels very much like family. They're not just friends or business associates or anything like that. They are, it feels very much like they're all family. And they were all in his life. Drew Banks, his uncle Drew, has been in his life since he was 8 years old, right? Nick has been there since high school. Justin's been there since 14. And so they've all been a part of his life pre-fame, even, and sometimes in Drew's case, like nobody knew who Ant was. They kind of knew who he was through football. They didn't know who he was through basketball at that point in time. And Drew's the guy who's waking up in the mornings and driving him an hour in traffic to go to Catholic school on the northern end of Atlanta. So, they were all in his life, all there when, other people couldn't or weren't. And for that, they all became like family. They could tell the truth to him. They could tell him when he's being unserious or whatnot. And, I think it's that family, that ability to, be truth telling and candid and just have those people and know that they have your best interests at heart, that they've cared about you and your best interests since the day they met you. I think that's important and not something that all athletes can find out there.
I want to take care of TSR Injury Law because they've taken such good care of us. If Naz Reid leaves in free agency, I think TSR Injury Law is going to have to open a branch wherever he goes. But I say that facetiously because TSR Injury Law is a Minnesota company. They started here. They've thrived here. They take care of Minnesotans. They're not coming in from another market, or they're not a national company that's trying to pretend they're part of the Minnesota scene. They are Minnesotans. They love the opportunity to work with Naz Reid because they love him like these are fans, and they love Naz's story. Well, their story is very similar to Naz's. But all you really need to know is if you're ever injured, call 612-TSR-TIME, 612-TSR-TIME, and they'll take good care of you. They won't charge you unless they win your case, and they win a lot of cases. That's why they've become such a big deal. It's why they're so visible. We just appreciate them because they've always been so good to us, both in terms of business and as human beings. So, we hope you don't need them, but if you need that kind of help, you want them. 612-TSR-TIME. Thanks also to Royal Credit Union.
It's time for change. Experience better banking at Royal Credit Union and put your financial goals in motion with helpful tools and personal support. Get started at rcu.org/time. Insured by NCUA.
Well, if we can transition kind of sort of away from the book, but also keep it Ant-centric, I think there's a good subject here to talk about, Chris, in terms of at Game 5, it's over, they get wiped out. Ant is asked, hey, how much does this hurt? And Ant says, doesn't really hurt at all. Like, he's like, I hurt for Mike Conley, I hurt for other people, but hurt is not the way that I look at things in the, with basketball. And there is a segment of basketball fans who just really want their stars to live and breathe and eat and sleep and die with this thing. And when things don't go wrong, they want the visceral kind of emotion or dread or whatever you discussed, whatever you want to call it, from their athletes. And I think some people misinterpreted it, frankly, and took that to say, well, Ant doesn't really care about this. You certainly know Ant as well as anyone. Like, how did you interpret that, and how do you kind of put that in the context of who Ant is, about how he looks at things and where he goes this summer after the setback that they suffered?
I think it's funny. You and I were both in that press conference. It did not strike me as like an unusual answer for him. Like it just struck me as Ant being Ant. And so when I saw some of the reaction that he got for what he said, I was a little surprised, because having covered him for 5 years, I'm like, this is how Ant reacts to things. Like, I think a lot of times he can keep the big picture in perspective. And if you read about where he's come from, what he's been through in his life, you understand maybe why he has a positive attitude even in some of these tougher moments. And it struck me as, this is also the nature of NBA discourse in 2025. If you don't follow a certain script that people want you to follow, they're gonna ding you for it. Like they're gonna criticize you for it. So if you're not looking angry and brooding up there at the press conference after your season ended, they're gonna hit you for it. And so with him, it did not strike me as anything out of the ordinary for Ant. It's not a knock on his competitiveness. We both know, like, he's super competitive. He's in the gym constantly. He will be in the gym constantly over the summer, working on his game. The people around the Wolves know that. There's a quote from Tim Connolly in the book that Ant was always addicted to competition. Like they just had to get him addicted to basketball. Like that was kind of one of Tim's things when he came in. So that competitive drive, that work ethic has always been there. That desire to win has never been lacking. And so it just struck me as, people just wanting him to be performative for the sake of being performative. And if there's one thing about Ant, it's that he's never performative. He's always his authentic self at all times. And that was just one of those moments, I feel like.
Yeah. And I think another part of it, Chris, is that Ant really genuinely believes that we'll have another crack at this. Yeah. Like we are going to get back to this spot again because I believe in myself and I believe in the group around me. And so where you saw like Mike Conley with just crestfallen and wondering, hey, maybe this is my last shot at it. Maybe I will not be back for it. And not only because I think of his age and how close he is to retirement, but also because he understands how difficult it is to go through 82 games, to win another couple of playoff series and get back to this moment. Whereas Ant, after the Dallas series, and then I think after this one too, it's just like, we'll be back here again. Like this is what it is. And I do think people, whether that is, immature or not, not recognizing the gravity of it or not, this is exactly what Ant thinks is like, okay, I'll see you again next year and we'll see if this is any different. And
I think that plays in part with the confidence that he tries to put in other people. And I think that all lines up with his personality. That is the one thing I will say that I would, if I were to caution or like say, it's not guaranteed that you're ever going to be back here. It just isn't. Like how many teams, not just Mike, but like, for instance, like looking at like the 76ers over the last decade, right? Like they haven't made a conference finals and they've had an MVP on the team and they've had, such high hopes year over year, but even getting to the conference finals is such a tall task and something to be celebrated. But you can't take it for granted that just because you are 23 and you've been there twice, that you're going to get back there. So that is the one part of what he said. Like if he had maybe said something along the lines like, I know it's going to be hard. I know that we can't take these moments for granted. Maybe that would have softened the blow of the criticism that he received out there. But again, this is who he is. And I think he wants to instill confidence in his teammates, in the organization that, we're going to be back here. We're going to work. I'm going to work hard and we're going to be right back here sooner than later.
We want to thank all of our listeners at TalkNorth.com. You've helped us grow. You've helped us exist. We really appreciate you listening. Best way to listen to this show or any show at the network, please subscribe to your favorite podcast app. It's free. It's the easiest way to listen. But we wouldn't exist without our sponsors. We really appreciate them. And we're very lucky on all of our shows, especially this show, to be working with Minnesota companies who love the Wolves, who love Jon Krawczynski, who love the whole scene. So let's start today by thanking True Vision Institute.
TrueVision.com is the place to go. Set up your consultation now. For people who are watching this on YouTube, we're recently starting to put these things on video now. You can see that I'm not wearing glasses anymore. And I've told you for almost a year now what a difference it's made in my life. And so if you go to True Vision in Bloomington, see Dr. Chu, see all of the warm and just wonderful people who are working there and will get you set up with the right possible vision correction for yourself. It could be LASIK surgery. It could be another form of addressing the situation, but they are very knowledgeable. They will not pressure you into anything that you don't want to do or you don't think is right for you, but they will help you answer the questions that are needed to be answered to get you to the right spot. And then if it is LASIK, like it was for me, I just can't tell you what a difference it's made in my life. It makes traveling easier. It makes going swimming with the kids easier. It makes you getting up in the morning and not having to fumble for glasses or contacts so much easier. So I really suggest going to TrueVision.com, go through the questionnaire, get yourself set up, and just go in and talk to them. And when all is said and done, when you get this thing taken care of, when Dr. Chu gets you through the procedure that takes less than 10 minutes to do, and you're on the other side of it, you're going to be kicking yourself saying, I should have done this 10 years ago. So go to TrueVision.com, tell them Jon Krawczynski Show sent you, and get on with your life.
Also want to thank Head Flyer Brewing. We do our live shows there, and it's the best place to watch Timberwolves basketball.
Head Flyer Brewing in Northeast Minneapolis. Right now, the finals are going on. I know some people, if you want to go there and boo the Thunder, boo the Floppers, SGA and Dort, and get after that way, that can be therapeutic as well. You don't have to be watching Timberwolves games in the middle of things. You can go there. You can have great beers. You can have a fun time hanging out. They have a pizza truck right outside, easy to have some food there for you as well. But most importantly, they just have great beer. Any kind of flavor, any kind of style that you want, Head Flyer has you taken care of. I love Wicked Jump Shot. I love Crunch Time, but there are so many others versions that you can go to. And sneaker reporter Travis Sheridan is now has a collaboration as well. So stop over to Head Flyer Brewing in Northeast Minneapolis and just soak up, watch a game, hang out on the deck that's outside. The weather's been beautiful lately. Nothing like having a wicked jump shot sitting outside with your friends, with your dog, with your kids. They got board games and stuff to entertain them. Make it a family thing, make it a friend thing, make it a coworker thing. Stop in Head Flyer Brewing in Northeast Minneapolis.
Finally, we want to thank Shepherd Goods and Lamb Chops clothing line. They're last on our lineup because we always set up our Twitter question of the day. Do we have a Twitter question today, John?
Chris Hine is all of our questions today,
okay.
So we'll come back next week with the Twitter question, but sglambchops.com is the place to go for great streetwear, casual wear. Jordan and Craig sit courtside at these games. You see them all the time. They are part of this community. Go to sglambchops.com. The promo code to use is JONK20 for 20% off anything that you get there. Hoodies, sweatshirts, sweatpants, sweaters, hats, t-shirts. They have all sorts of stuff. They're releasing new lines here as we speak. And so there's really fresh stuff that you can wear. You can wear it at home lounging around. You can wear it out in the North Loop on a night hanging out with your friends and feel very comfortable and very in style. And most importantly, they're just this is a local company as well. They are in here. They are embedded with the Lynx and the Wolves. They are part of this basketball community. So go to sglambchops.com, promo code JONK20 for 20% off anything you get there. Look good and feel good wearing lamb chops.
So let's talk about one of Anthony Edwards' favorite people, Kevin Durant. We don't know what's going to happen, but let's start with Chris here. Chris, do you think the Wolves are interested in trading for Kevin Durant? And if so, do you think Anthony Edwards has a voice in the conversation or has a preference?
Excellent question. Yes, they are interested, but I wonder at what cost. And I think that they recognize that one of the reasons they were here this year and one of the key things going forward in the league in the second apron era is the ability to have depth. So if a Kevin Durant deal comes at the cost of a significant chunk of their depth in future, I don't know at the end of the day if they will pull the trigger on that. So I'm maybe a little more skeptical about a KD trade than I was at the deadline, but never say never, right? And crazier things have happened. But I think they value their depth. That's just the vibe I'm getting. I don't know about you, John.
Yeah, I think the important thing here to understand about the context of deal making, especially in this NBA collective bargaining agreement that Tim Connolly spoke about just last week, was that it is very hard to get trades done anyway, but in this new collective bargaining agreement, it's even harder. You have second aprons, you have restrictions, you have all of these things that you have to deal with that reduce the likelihood of major trades happening. It doesn't mean it's impossible. It doesn't mean it won't happen. I am 100% sure that the Timberwolves will continue at least to look at possibilities that are there. It may be that they get through these conversations, that they look at what they were able to do in the playoffs, and they kind of land in the same place they did in February of like, man, this is really intriguing. We think it would really help us, but there's too many things that have to happen, secondary deals with other teams, multiple team configurations that it might make it too difficult to pull off. That said, I will say that I do believe the price tag for Kevin Durant has dropped fairly significantly from what it was in February, given he's going to be 37 next year. He's in the last year of his deal. Everyone in the league knows that he's going to be traded. And so that might make it, where you don't have to give away the farm for him, and might make a deal a little bit easier to get to. And I do think that when you look at the finals and you look at the success the Pacers had against Oklahoma City in game one, maybe the successful against the Thunder is you have to have multiple guys who can put the ball on the floor, get their own shot, and break a defense down. And I think that's where the Wolves really struggled in the series. And so adding a Kevin Durant would be a big help for that. It just is like, I agree with Chris that it depends on how much it would take to get the deal done. And I agree with him. I don't think they would eradicate their depth for it, but I wonder if they will have to, just given where the price is and where the market is for him right now.
Let's talk about another Wolves angle here. Tom Thibodeau gets fired after taking a team to Game 6 of the Eastern Conference Finals. Do you think that was simply the Knicks saying, we just think a different coach is required to take us over the top? Or do you think, as was kind of the case with the Timberwolves, that Thibs kind of wears people out and becomes somebody you just don't want to work with anymore?
I
mean, it could be a little bit of both. Yeah, go ahead, Chris.
I was just going to say the exact same thing. Probably is a little bit of both. I think, from reading some of the reporting, the latter does seem to be true in some ways with maybe some of the players, but also I think players just generally will have complaints about the coach, especially those that are maybe not getting playing time or as much playing time as they want. And especially with Thibs, when you have a guy that leans heavily on his starters for minutes, that might lead to some hard feelings on the bench from guys. So take what the players say, or anonymous player quotes, sometimes with a grain of salt in those. But it's the Knicks, it's James Dolan. You never know what thoughts are going to be creeping into his head at any given moment. So,
well, and I also think it is sort of an indicator of the difference. If you want to put it, culture differences between the Timberwolves and Knicks, who both had they shared in a huge trade at the start of the season. Mm-hmm. They both got to the conference finals, which were hugely successful in the context of what their seasons normally amount to. But even going into the playoffs, we were hearing whispers about maybe Tibbs's job security is shaky, and it depends on what happens. And then they get to the Eastern Conference Finals and it's still not enough. And I think one thing that Tim Connolly has done a very good job of in Minnesota is sort of not allowing that kind of thing to fester. Chris Finch has taken much criticism from fans, some frustrations here and there. But Connolly kind of has made it clear throughout the organization that we're not playing that game here. This is what we believe in. We're going forward. And so I think the players understand that as well, that there's not going to be power struggles within the organization just because of the way that the Wolves are operating right now. And I just don't think that the Knicks were as connected that way in the locker room with the coaching staff, with the front office. And I think that allows things like this to germinate, and great job there in 5 years of helping rebuild that team. But he can be hard to work with, but also the organization sort of not really kind of fostering an environment of, hey, we are all in this together and we're going to stick with each other.
So, Chris, a couple minutes left here. I just want to give you the floor, whether to talk about the book, the process, what it's like to be an author That's something I wrote a children's book way back when, but I've never done anything like what you just did. Just kind of take us inside your head. How are you feeling about the whole process? Or if there's anything we haven't asked you about, you want to talk about, you have the floor.
Yeah, it's just been really cool to see the response on social media as people have been getting the book and actually being able to read it. Because, I've lived with some of the material now for 8 to 10 months, and what's in it, and I've wanted it to be out there in the world and people to read it and enjoy it, and it seems like people are responding to it, especially the early chapters about his young life in a really great way. I think people are taking all the right notes from it that I intended, and yeah, it feels very strange still that somehow this came together and as quickly as it did. I didn't know that was going to happen. I had basically 3-4 months to pull it off, and somehow I think I blacked out and did it. That was the most surprising thing. I was banking on a nice quiet training camp to ease doing my day job at the Strib, and while doing this, and of course they dropped the trade 2 days before training camp. That upended things in October a little bit for me. But yeah, it was a challenge. But when I had the meeting back in May of 2024 with my publisher, there was just something that was you can do this. Even amid all the doubt and the challenges that were present, the one thing that I always kind of had within me was, you can do this. You can get this to the finish line. You have Ant's story. You've covered him for 4 or 5 years now in the NBA. The themes to hit. The buttons to hit. And I always had that kind of, even amid the doubt, I always had that inner belief that this could get done. And I'm glad that won out at the end of the day over some of the more doubtful skepticism moments in my head back in October and September.
What you're trying to say is that the critics and the haters should just suck it.
There haven't been critics and haters about this. It's been, and that's been really cool too. Everybody's been so supportive. Wolves fans have been great. Social media, people reaching out, wanting signed copies, this and that. It's been really cool to see the overwhelmingly positive response to this. And I think a lot of people understand that, for me, this is a big deal in my career, and they're showing such great support. And I just want to thank Wolves fans for that, because it's been awesome to see.
Hey, Chris, just as we wrap up here, do you have any sort of appearances or things that you want to promote? Any, signings or other podcast appearances or whatever people can catch you, just to, if they want more interaction about you, about this book, and what's next for you? Yeah.
I went on Dane's show a few weeks ago. We did basically an all book episode at Falling Knife. Fragrant Howls I went on. I'll be on with Canis Hoopus this week, and went on Barrero last week, I think. So bumper to bumper in your podcast feeds as well. If Crunch Wears No Pants, I went on with those guys last week as well. That was a lot of fun. They were asking me questions about Mariah Carey, which I loved. And Majors and Quinn on the 18th. I will be there to talk a little bit about the book and sign copies. And then the Barnes & Noble in Uptown, that is on the 28th. I think 1:00, and I think Majors and Quinn on the 18th is at 7. But they're advertising that on their website, and I'll be pumping it out on social media as well as it gets nearer.
Fantastic.
Right.
Well, congratulations, Chris. We're really happy for you. We're,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if proud is the right word, but that's what kind of feels like the right word. It's just a really cool thing you've done. Chris is just a great presence on the Timberwolves beat, and I guess what you call the Timberwolves community. So it's just great to see you you're rewarded for your hard work. Thanks to Chris Hine. Get the book, read him in the Star Tribune, subscribe. We would appreciate it. I'm sure we'll have him back on this show at some point. Chris, you're always welcome. If you ever want to come back on, let us know, because we'd love having you. So for Jon Krawczynski, for the staff at TalkNorth.com, for Chris Hine, I'm Jim Souhan. Thanks so much for listening. We'll talk to you soon.